My new apartment came with a locked room. The landlord said to ignore. When I first saw the apartment, it felt too good to be true. Top floor, old building, rent suspiciously cheap. The kind of place where the windows rattled when buses went by, where the paint peeled a little near the baseboards. But it was mine. The landlord, Mr. Keller, was a soft-spoken man with a gray beard and a voice like gravel dragged through smoke. He barely looked at me when I signed the lease, just pointed at each page with a long nicotine-stained finger. When I asked about the rent being so low, he just smiled. "Not everyone likes old places," he said. On my second walkthrough, I noticed it. A narrow, paint-chipped door in the hallway between the bedroom and the bathroom. No handle, just a small keyhole and a faint outline where a knob might have been once. "What's in there?" I asked. He didn't look up from the papers. "Storage. You don't need to worry about it." "Is there a key?" "Lost a long time ago." He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. Best to ignore it. The first week was fine. I unpacked, set up my bookshelves, got used to the hum of the old radiator. The city noise at night blended into something almost peaceful. Still, that door drew my eye every time I walked past. It was so ordinary it almost felt staged, like it wanted me to forget it was there. On the fourth night, I woke to a sound. A faint tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was from the pipes, but as I lay there listening, I realized it came from the hallway, from behind the locked door. It stopped when I sat up. I told myself it was nothing. Old building, settling wood, maybe mice, but I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. Then, so faint I almost missed it, a sound like breathing, slow, uneven. I jerked back, heart pounding. My breath fogged the cold air near the crack of the door. That was when I noticed the smell. Faint, sour, like wet concrete and something metallic beneath it. I called Mr. Keller. He answered on the second ring. "There's something moving behind that locked door," I said. "It sounds..." He cut me off. "Don't go near it." "What's in there?" "It's sealed for a reason. You said it's storage." A pause, then, "Don't open it, Mr. Avery. That's all you need to know." He hung up. That night, the tapping came back. Slower this time. Rhythmic. I turned the TV up loud enough to drown it out, but every time the screen went quiet between scenes, I could still hear it, soft and patient. Tap, tap, tap. When I finally shut off the lights and crawled into bed, the sound stopped until I heard something new, a whisper, right against the door. "Avery." I sat up, frozen. My name, clear as day. When I looked down the hallway, I swore I saw movement under the crack, a shadow shifting against the sliver of light from the living room. Then, silence again. The next morning, the smell was stronger. It clung to the air, thick and metallic. I pushed a towel under the door. It helped, but barely. That evening, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and thought I saw something behind me. A face, pale, blurred, standing where the locked door was. When I turned, the hallway was empty. The next day, I asked a neighbor about it. An older woman 2 doors down named Marta, who seemed to have lived there forever. When I mentioned the door, she went pale. "You got Keller's place?" "Yeah. Why?" "That door was supposed to stay sealed." "What's in it?" She hesitated. "He told you to ignore it, didn't he?" "Yes." She looked down the hallway, as if afraid someone might be listening. "Then you should." When I pressed her, she only said one more thing. "He tried to keep it quiet, but the smell always gives it away." That night, I woke up again. Not from the tapping this time, but from the sound of something sliding against wood, like fingers dragging along the inside of the door. Then a click. I sat up, heart pounding. The door was still closed, but the faint glint of metal near the keyhole caught the light from the street lamp outside. Someone had unlocked it. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing happened. Finally, I forced myself to get up. I stepped closer, barefoot on the cold floor, pulse hammering in my ears. The smell was unbearable now. Rot and rust. I reached out, touched the door. The surface was ice cold. Then something tapped back. 3 times. Slow. Measured. I stumbled backward, knocking over a picture frame. The sound stopped. When I bent to pick it up, the photo inside, of me and my sister taken 2 years ago, had changed. In the background, faint but visible, was a figure standing in a doorway, the same narrow, handleless door from my apartment. I called the landlord again the next morning. No answer. I tried all day. Still nothing. When I went to his office, the door was locked. A yellowed note taped to the glass read, "Closed until further notice." I asked Marta if she'd seen him. She shook her head slowly. "Keller doesn't live here anymore." "What do you mean?" "He sold this building a year ago." "That's not possible. I met him last week." Her eyes narrowed. "You couldn't have." I left without another word. When I got back to my apartment, the door was open. Not the front door, the locked one. The room beyond was dark. The smell poured out in a wave so thick it burned my throat. I should have left. I should have called the police. Instead, I turned on my phone's flashlight and stepped inside. The floorboards creaked. The air was colder here, colder than the rest of the apartment, like the heat couldn't reach past the threshold. The walls were bare concrete. The room was smaller than I expected, maybe 6 by 6 feet, with nothing inside except a single chair and a black stain spreading beneath it. Something glimmered near the far wall. I knelt, shining the light closer. It was a small metal box, half buried in dust. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Each one showed the same room, the same concrete walls, the same chair. But in every photo, someone different sat in the chair. Their faces were blurred, their hands tied behind them. The most recent one showed a man I recognized, Mr. Keller. His eyes were open, his mouth was stretched wide as if screaming, and behind him, standing in the doorway, was another figure. It looked exactly like me. The flashlight flickered. The smell grew worse. From behind me came a soft, wet sound, like footsteps dragging through something thick. I turned. The door was closing. Before I could reach it, it slammed shut, plunging the room into total darkness. The air vibrated with a low hum. My breath came fast and shallow. Then a voice whispered, right next to my ear, "It's your turn." The light on my phone went out. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, waiting for something to touch me. When I finally found the courage to move, the door opened on its own. The hallway outside looked normal again, but when I stepped out, the walls were different, the pictures gone, the wallpaper new. And when I looked at the number on the front door, it wasn't mine anymore, 13A. My apartment had been 12B. I don't know where I am now. The landlord's office doesn't exist. Marta doesn't answer. The building looks the same from the outside, but the hallways twist in ways they shouldn't. Every door I open leads back to the one I started from, and behind the locked door I can still hear tapping. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast, but lately, when I get too close, I hear something new. A voice. "Avery, you left the door open." The hallway stretched longer than I remembered. The floorboards changed under my feet, from old oak to concrete, then tile, then wood again, as if the building couldn't make up its mind what century it belonged to. Every few steps, a light flickered overhead. The air carried that same sour, metallic scent, thicker the farther I went. I stopped in front of my door, or what should have been my door. 12B, except the number plate was missing, and the key didn't fit. I knocked once. The sound echoed like I'd hit stone. When the echo faded, another knock came back. From the other side, slow, perfectly timed. I backed away until my shoulders hit the opposite wall. The door creaked, hinges whining like an animal in pain. It opened an inch. A sliver of light spilled through. Not yellow like a bulb, but pale blue, the color of a dead screen. Something moved behind it. I ran. I didn't think. My body just acted. I bolted down the hallway, past the stairwell, past Marta's apartment, but the hallway didn't end. Every turn led back to the same stretch, same flickering light, same smell. At one point, I tried counting the doors. There were 8 on each side, but after the 4th loop, there were 9, then 7. The air pulsed, faint and steady, like the whole building was breathing. When I stopped running, I realized I wasn't alone. A faint scraping sound came from around the corner, soft, deliberate metal on wood. I took a step closer, heart hammering, and peeked around. Someone was crouched in front of a door, a man, thin and hunched, wearing a janitor's uniform that looked 20 years old. His back rose and fell in slow jerks. He was carving something into the wall with a screwdriver. I cleared my throat. "Hey," he didn't react. "Sir, are you—" He turned. His face wasn't right. The skin hung loose around the jaw, his eyes milky white, his mouth opened, too wide, and a voice came out that wasn't his. "It's not locked anymore." Then he stood, slow and stiff, and pointed the screwdriver at me. "You should have stayed out." I stumbled backward. He took a step toward me, dragging the screwdriver along the wall. Sparks jumped where the metal scraped. When he reached the light overhead, it flickered once, and in that half-second of darkness, he vanished. The only thing left behind was the word he'd carved into the plaster. Opened. I found the stairwell again, or maybe a stairwell. The steps spiraled down farther than they should have, disappearing into darkness. I counted 20 before my legs began to shake. The air got colder, damper. I could hear water dripping somewhere below. At the bottom was another hallway, narrower, concrete walls, bare pipes overhead, and at the end of it, a door. The same one, narrow, handleless. The smell poured from the cracks like fog. I wanted to turn back, but behind me came the sound of footsteps, dozens of them, bare and wet, slapping against the concrete in rhythm. I pressed forward instead. When I reached the door, I pressed my hand against it. The surface was damp, pulsing faintly under my palm, almost like skin. Something whispered from the other side. "You came back." My throat tightened. "What's in there?" "We are." The voice wasn't one. It was many, layered together. "You opened it. You left it open." I stepped back. "I didn't." "We remember you." The door shuddered. Cracks split down the center, light spilling through. Not blue this time, but red, throbbing like a heartbeat. The footsteps behind me grew louder. I turned, but the hallway was empty. Then a hand shot out of the wall, pale, thin, gripping my wrist hard enough to bruise. I screamed, yanking back, but more hands followed, dozens of them, pushing out of the concrete like it was soft clay. They grabbed my clothes, my arms, my throat. I hit the door behind me, and it gave way. Inside was the same small concrete room. The chair, the stain, the smell. Only now the walls pulsed like living tissue. Photographs still covered the floor, scattered like dead leaves. I knelt to pick one up. It showed the janitor from upstairs, sitting in the chair, head slumped forward. Another showed Marta. Then I found one that made my breath stop. It was me, sitting exactly where I was now. Behind me in the picture, the door was open, and dozens of hands reached through. I looked up. The real door was closing. I lunged, but something pulled me back. Not a hand this time, but something unseen, heavy and cold. The room darkened. The air grew thick. A voice spoke softly right beside my ear. "You belong here now." I tried to shout, but my throat wouldn't move. The world blinked out. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the floor of my apartment. The door to the small room was shut, the smell gone. Morning light streamed through the window. For a few minutes, I convinced myself it had all been a dream, until I saw the photographs. They were neatly stacked on the kitchen counter, tied together with twine. On top was the newest one. It showed me, lying exactly where I was now. And behind me, in the doorway of the small room, a shadow leaned forward, almost touching my shoulder. Underneath, in the corner of the photograph, written in shaky handwriting, "Don't ignore it." When I woke the next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds like nothing had ever happened. The smell was gone. The floor was clean. The air even smelled faintly of lemon soap. For a few seconds I lay there, half convinced that the night before had been some extended feverish dream. Then I saw the photographs. They were still there, stacked neatly on the counter, twine knotted with careful precision, the top one showing me asleep on the same couch I was lying on now. The shadow behind me seemed darker than I remembered. I slid the stack into a drawer and shut it. "Forget it," I muttered. "Forget it." I showered, dressed, went outside. The street looked normal too. Same bakery smell, same old man feeding pigeons. But the longer I stood there, the more wrong it felt, like every sound was half a second too late. The clatter of a bus, the bark of a dog, all arriving fractionally after they should have. When I turned back toward the building, my windows were dark, all of them. I tried to find Marta again. Her apartment door was open, the chain still dangling, but the room inside was empty. No furniture, no smell, just dust. The floorboards looked untouched, as though no one had ever lived there. On the wall above her door, someone had scratched 3 letters into the paint. OPN, I didn't wait around. Downstairs, the mailbox area was half lit. Keller's old nameplate was still on the landlord's box. I tugged it open out of some stupid instinct and found a single envelope inside, addressed to me. No stamp, no postmark. Inside was one of the photographs from the box, different from the rest. This one showed a door halfway open, and through it a blur of faces, dozens stacked on top of one another, all looking out. Across the bottom in smudged ink, "They don't forget." By the time I got back to my floor, the hallway had changed again. The lights were dimmer. The wallpaper, which had been beige yesterday, was now dark and peeling. The smell of rust and wet concrete rolled out from beneath my door. My key slid in easily this time, too easily. Inside, everything was where I'd left it, except the drawer with the photographs. It was open, empty. The small door in the hallway stood ajar. I should have run. I know that. But the curiosity had sunk too deep, coiled around something in me I couldn't name. The air near the door felt colder, thicker. I pushed it open. The room inside wasn't small anymore. It stretched far beyond where the wall should have been, floor descending into uneven stone steps. Faint light glowed from somewhere below, a dull red like the inside of a furnace. "Hello?" my voice echoed, bouncing back at me in fragments. "Hello?" The reply came from below. My voice again, identical, only slower. I took a step down. The walls pulsed faintly, breathing. Moisture dripped from the ceiling. At the bottom of the stairs, the space widened into what looked like an old cellar, circular and deep. In the center stood the chair, the same one from the photographs. Someone was sitting in it. At first I thought it was Keller, the gray beard, the slumped shoulders, but when he raised his head, I saw my own face staring back at me. I froze. He smiled, just a little. "You made it back." My mouth was dry. "What are you?" "I'm what you left behind." He stood, slow and deliberate, the same way I moved when my body hurt. Every gesture was mine. "You open doors," he said. "You never close them." I shook my head. "This isn't real." "It wasn't the first time either," he murmured, stepping closer. "Do you remember the others?" "The others?" He reached out. His fingers were ice cold when they touched my wrist. For a second I saw flashes, faces, rooms, doors, all identical. Different cities, different names, always the same narrow door sealed behind wallpaper. Each one of them me. "You keep finding us," he said softly. "You never stop looking." "I don't understand." He leaned close enough that I could feel his breath. "You will." The lights flickered red, then black. When they came back on, he was gone. Only the chair remained, and on it, a fresh photograph, still wet from chemicals. It showed me standing exactly where I was now, staring at an empty chair. I ran back up the steps through the hallway, into my apartment. The door slammed shut behind me. Every photo I'd ever owned, family, friends, vacations, now showed that same room in the background, that same open door. The apartment buzzed faintly, electricity humming through the outlets even though every light was off. Then my phone rang. No caller ID, just unknown number. I answered. "You forgot to close it," Keller's voice, hoarse and broken. "What is this place?" I shouted. "A doorway. You were never supposed to live above it. How do I stop it?" "You can't. You can only replace yourself." The line went dead. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cellar again, the endless walls, the chair, the version of me that waited there. At 3:07 a.m., the tapping started, not from the door this time, from the ceiling. I climbed on a chair, pressed my ear to the plaster. Something was moving above, slow and steady, dragging along the beams. A drop of water, or something thicker, splashed onto my hand. When I looked, it wasn't water. It was black, sticky, and it smelled like the concrete room. I wiped it away and stared at the dark stain spreading across the ceiling, forming the faint outline of a door. By morning, the stain had dried, but the outline remained. perfectly symmetrical, right above my bed. I packed a bag. I didn't care about the lease, about Keller, about anything. I just needed to leave. When I reached the lobby, the front door was boarded up from the inside. Fresh wood, new nails. Through the cracks, I could see daylight and people walking by. None of them seemed to hear me pounding on the door. Behind me, the elevator dinged. Its doors slid open, though I hadn't pressed the button. Inside, the floor indicator glowed. B basement. I should have run, but my legs moved on their own. The elevator shuddered as it descended. The light inside flickered, and for a split second the reflection in the metal walls wasn't mine. It was his. When the doors opened, the smell hit me first. Rust, mold, and something else. Something sweet and rotten. The hallway ahead looked like the one I'd seen in the cellar, narrow and pulsing faintly with red light. At the end stood another door, handleless, waiting. I walked toward it, each step heavier than the last. The closer I got, the louder the hum became, until it vibrated in my teeth and bones. When I reached it, the surface rippled under my hand, soft like flesh. From behind the door came hundreds of voices whispering in perfect unison. "Close it." I pushed, but the door didn't move. The whispers grew frantic, echoing off the concrete. "Close it." "I don't know how." "Replace yourself." The floor beneath me cracked. The light flared, and through that red glow I saw them. Faces pressing out from the walls, eyes open, mouths silent. One of them was mine. The last thing I remember before the light swallowed me was reaching for the door. I woke in my bed again. Morning sunlight. Quiet air. The door in the hallway was sealed shut, a solid wall of plaster where it used to be. For the first time in weeks, there was no smell, no sound, no hum. I almost believed it was over, until I looked at the ceiling. A narrow crack ran down the middle, faint but widening, and from it came a slow, steady tapping, the sound of fingers on wood, waiting to be let out. When the tapping began again, it came from the ceiling and the floor at once, a slow, syncopated rhythm that made the walls vibrate. I sat up in bed, listening to the plaster flake above me, and for a second I thought the ceiling would cave in. Then it stopped, mid-beat, as though something were listening to my breath. The crack that had opened overnight now ran the full length of the room. A faint light leaked from it, not red this time, but a dull gray, the color of old photographs. I could hear faint voices inside the walls, whispering in languages I didn't understand, every few words dissolving into my own name. I told myself I was leaving. I threw clothes into a bag, grabbed my phone, and headed for the door. The hallway outside was the same, dim, still, stale air, but the floor numbers on the wall had changed. Instead of 12B, the plaque now read 11C. The light over my door buzzed weakly. When I looked back, the paint had started to peel away from the plaster, revealing another number underneath. 13A, the apartment that shouldn't have existed. The elevator was waiting. I pressed L for lobby, but the button didn't light. The doors closed anyway, and the car dropped with a soft lurch that sent my stomach into my throat. There was no music this time, only the faint hiss of the old wiring. The floor indicator ticked past numbers that didn't exist. B1, B2, B3, each one deeper than the last. When the doors opened, the smell hit me like before. Concrete, rot, something metallic beneath it. I was standing in the cellar again, only now it was bigger. The walls stretched away into darkness, the single chair sitting in the middle of a circle of light. On the seat lay a stack of photographs. I forced myself closer. Each one showed a version of me, sitting, standing, sleeping, every image older, grainier, until the last one wasn't me at all but a blur of faces pressed together. In the corner of that photo, scrawled in white ink, "Close it." A sound came from behind me. Someone, or something, was coming down the stairwell slow and steady. I turned, but the shadows didn't move right. They folded in on themselves like smoke. Then Keller stepped into the light. He looked older than before, eyes sunken, skin pale as paper. "You didn't listen," he rasped. "What is this place?" He glanced around the cellar. "It's the first door, the one they built everything on. You can't rent above a grave and not expect to hear it whisper. Grave?" He nodded. "Every time someone finds it, it needs a name. You gave it yours. I didn't open it." "You dreamed it open," Keller said softly. "That's enough." He reached into his coat and pulled out a key. Long, rusted, teeth worn smooth. "This is what they left me," he said. "I used it once and it never closed again." He placed it in my palm. "You'll have to turn it." "Turn it where?" He pointed to the far wall. The outline of a door shimmered there, faint and pulsing. the same dull gray light seeping from its cracks. The key was cold and heavy. I pushed it into the invisible lock, feeling the resistance twist through my arm like an electric current. From the other side came the sound of breathing, dozens of them, in unison. Keller whispered, "They'll try to stop you." Then the voices began, familiar ones. Marta, the janitor, my own, all pleading, overlapping. "Don't close it. You'll trap us. You'll trap yourself." I turned the key. The ground shook. The light dimmed to a pulse, each flicker slower than the last. Keller stepped back, shielding his face. "Keep turning." I did. The air turned thick, the smell stronger. My arm ached as the key ground against the lock. Then, with a final click, the light went out. Darkness swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in my apartment again. The air was still. The smell was gone. The small door in the hallway was nothing but solid wall. No seam, no keyhole, no crack. For the first time in months, I could breathe without tasting dust and metal. I packed what I could carry and left without locking up. Outside, the sky was bright and cloudless. I walked for blocks without looking back until the sound of the city returned to normal. Cars, people, the low hum of life. When I reached the corner, I turned once more toward the building. Every window was dark except one, my old apartment. A faint light glowed behind the curtains, steady and warm, like someone had just turned on a lamp. Then I saw movement. A figure standing in the window, head tilted, watching me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against every instinct, I answered. "You closed the wrong door." The line went dead. I left the city that night. New name, new job, new number. I found a place halfway across the state, a converted loft above an old bakery. The walls smelled of flour instead of concrete. For a while, it was quiet. Then one morning, I noticed a narrow crack in the brick behind the fridge, just wide enough to see a sliver of darkness inside. And that smell, wet concrete, rust. When I pressed my ear against it, I heard tapping. 3 knocks. Slow. Measured. The same rhythm as before. I bought plaster, patched it over, tried to forget. Weeks passed. Then the dreams started. Always the same. I'm walking down a hallway that stretches forever. The lights flicker, the air hums, and somewhere ahead, a door waits, handleless, waiting to be opened. In the dream, I always tell myself not to touch it, but I always do, and when it opens, I wake up to the sound of tapping. Last night it got louder, not from the wall this time, from the floor beneath my bed. When I lifted the boards, I found another door, smaller, wooden, painted over long ago. The paint cracked easily under the knife. Now I'm sitting here with the key in my hand, the same one Keller gave me, the one I swore I left behind. The air smells of dust and concrete. Somewhere inside the walls, a familiar voice whispers my name. Avery. You left it open again. I can feel the wood vibrating beneath my fingers, something breathing behind it. I tell myself not to turn the key, not to look, but the tapping is so steady, so patient. It's been waiting so long. The night I found the door beneath the floorboards, I sat for hours staring at it, my knees pulled up to my chest, the key warm in my palm from how tightly I'd been holding it. The smell of rust and old earth rose from the crack where the wood had split, the same metallic tang that had haunted the apartment in the city. I told myself not to open it, that it wasn't real, that Keller's key couldn't have followed me here. But every time I blinked, I saw that gray light flickering behind my eyelids and the echo of those voices whispering, "Close it, open it, replace yourself." By dawn, I'd made a decision. If I left it alone, it would never stop calling. I pried up the rest of the boards. The door was smaller than I'd thought, barely wide enough for my shoulders. It had no handle, no hinges, just the faint outline of an old frame and a keyhole exactly the right size. When I pushed the key in, it fit perfectly. The first turn felt wrong, like grinding against bone. On the second, the air in the room changed. The hum came back, the same vibration I'd felt months ago, running through my teeth, my chest, my bones. And then the world seemed to tilt. The loft walls stretched taller, the ceiling folded upward, and I smelled wet stone and dust. When I opened the door, the bakery basement should have been there. Instead, I was staring down into a stairwell lit by that same dull red glow. My stomach turned. The steps were made of concrete, slick with moisture, and far below I heard the faint rhythm of tapping. I should have run, but I went down. The stairs spiraled for what felt like hours. The walls breathed softly, air exhaling through cracks. Every so often I saw faces in the concrete, half-formed, mouths open in silent shapes. When I reached the bottom, I expected the cellar, the chair, the photographs. Instead, I found a corridor lined with doors, dozens of them, all identical, narrow, handleless, sealed. As I walked, each one began to vibrate faintly, a murmur behind the wood. "Hello?" I called. "Avery," they whispered in unison. "Don't close us again." My skin prickled. "What are you?" "Echoes," one voice said. "You made us when you opened the first door." "We remember you," another murmured. The corridor went on forever. I realized slowly that every door had a faint number carved into it. Some were scratched deep, others were fading. When I reached the last one, I froze. Carved into its surface, 12B. My apartment number. The light behind me dimmed. The hum grew louder. The air thickened until breathing hurt. I pressed my hand to the door. It pulsed faintly beneath my palm, warm like skin. "Please," I said, "tell me how to end this." For a long time, there was only the sound of breathing. Then, faintly, "Endings don't close, they fold." The keyhole glowed, dull red. "Turn it once for silence, twice for memory, 3 times for forever." My hands shook. "And what happens if I don't?" "You'll wake up again." I turned the key once, the humming slowed, the walls shuddering. Twice. The light dimmed to a heartbeat pulse. When I turned it the 3rd time, the door didn't open. It split. The wood peeled away, revealing a void behind it. Black, endless, and full of movement. Whispers poured out, thousands of them, all versions of my voice. "You left the door open. You'll never close it. We're you." The floor gave way. When I woke, I was standing in a room that looked like my apartment, but wrong. Everything gray, flat, the air thick as fog. The door to the hallway was gone. The windows were solid concrete. The only thing that remained was the small, narrow door between the bedroom and bathroom. It was open. Inside, the chair waited. I walked to it. My legs moved without command, every motion sluggish. On the seat lay a stack of photographs. The top one showed me holding the key. The next showed me opening the door. The next, me sitting in the chair. I turned the final photograph over. A message was written on the back in my own handwriting. "It's your turn to remember." A faint sound drew my attention. The phone on the counter, my phone, buzzed once. No number, no screen, just a hollow vibration that echoed through the walls. When I picked it up, the voice that came through was tired, calm, familiar. "Mr. Carter." My throat tightened. "Who is this?" "The landlord." "Keller?" "Not anymore." The line hissed softly, static swelling like a sigh. "You're the landlord now." The phone went dead. I don't know how much time has passed since then. Days? Weeks? Sometimes the lights outside shift from gray to white. Sometimes the tapping stops long enough for me to sleep. But when I wake, there's always a new sound. Footsteps in the hall. Someone testing the walls for seams. Voices whisper through the cracks. Curious. Hopeful. Tenants. I can feel them moving in upstairs, downstairs, through the walls. They hear the hum sometimes. They smell the concrete. They call the number Keller left in the lease. I answer every call. My voice sounds calm, practiced. "Don't worry about the small door," I tell them. "It's just storage. Best to ignore it." Some nights, when the hum gets too loud, I walk through the building, checking each apartment, each hallway. The doors shift, multiplying, breathing in the dark. Behind some, I hear whispers, pleading, laughing, remembering. Behind others, silence. And once in a while, when I pass the newest unit, I hear something else, the faint, rhythmic sound of someone tapping from inside. 3 knocks. Slow. Measured. I stand there listening until it stops. Then I slide the new lease under the door. This morning I found a letter on my desk. No address. No return name. Inside was a photograph. It showed a hallway I didn't recognize. Modern, clean, brightly lit. At the end of it stood a narrow, handleless door. On the back, in shaky handwriting, "I moved into a new place. There's a locked room the landlord said to ignore." The paper smelled faintly of concrete. And somewhere in the walls, the tapping started again. In the months that followed, I began to forget what silence sounded like. Even when the building slept, when no tenants stirred and the city outside was still, I could hear the hum, low and steady, like a pulse beneath concrete. It had become the rhythm of the place, the heartbeat of every wall. Sometimes I wondered if it was my own. I learned the building's moods. When the pipes groaned, something wanted attention. When the lights flickered twice, someone new was close to finding their door. The tenants changed often. Most left before their second rent cycle. Some disappeared without a word. Leases unsigned, rooms left. Immaculate except for that faint, rust-sweet smell that never quite went away. A few called me, their voices trembling through the receiver. "Mr. Keller?" they'd ask, and I'd feel the words crawl through the line, wrapping around my throat like static. I always answered the same way. "No, I'm the landlord now." And when they asked about the locked room, my voice always softened, became almost kind. Best to ignore it. They never did. One night, the hum stopped. For the first time since I'd taken over, the walls went still. The air was thick with a silence that didn't feel empty but expectant. I walked the hallways with the old key in my pocket. The lights flickered weakly, struggling against the dark. When I reached my old apartment, 12B, though the numbers had faded long ago, I felt it before I saw it. A vibration, faint and rising, under my shoes. The floorboards were warm. Something was waking up. Inside, the apartment was exactly as I remembered. The same couch, the same crooked blinds, the same narrow door between the bedroom and the bath, sealed shut with plaster, smooth and featureless. But now there was a faint crack running through the wall above it, the same gray light pulsing behind the plaster. And a sound. Not tapping this time. Knocking. Louder. Angrier. Then a voice. Muffled but clear enough to make my blood run cold. "Avery. Let me out." It was my voice. The plaster bulged outward. I took a step back as dust drifted from the ceiling. The hum returned, now rising to a shriek that rattled every window in the building. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "You left me in the chair." The voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a growl, layered with a dozen others. Every version of me I'd ever left behind. "You can't own the door. You are the door." The line went dead. The walls split open. Light poured through the crack, red and gray and black all at once, pulsing like blood. The room warped around it, stretching, twisting, the furniture melting into the floor. I tried to run, but the air was thick, dragging me back toward the door that wasn't a door anymore. It opened like a wound. Hands reached out, hundreds of them, pale and trembling, their nails scraping the wood. They didn't pull me in. They held me still. And from the threshold, he stepped through. Me. The me that had been trapped in the chair. His skin was paper thin, his eyes empty. He smiled. "You closed the wrong door." He walked past me into the apartment, leaving the hands to retreat back into the dark. The room reshaped itself around him. Walls sealing, lights warming, air sweetening. For a moment, it looked normal again. He turned to me and said softly, "Someone has to stay on the other side." I felt the pull then, gentle but absolute, dragging me backward into the light. He didn't stop me. He just closed the door. I don't know how long I've been here. There's no time, not really. Just the hum, the breathing walls, the faint smell of dust and rust and memory. I can see the world through the cracks sometimes. Tenants moving in, laughing, unpacking boxes. I hear them ask about the narrow door, and I hear my own voice answer them from the other side. "Storage, don't worry about it." They never listen. They always find the key eventually. And when they do, I'll be here, waiting. The hum grows louder now. Someone new has moved in. I can hear them walking across the floor, pausing by the door. Their breath catches. The key turns once, Twice, 3 times. The door opens, light floods in, and as it does, I whisper through the dark, "Welcome home."